Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to the second episode of the IT Career Guidance podcast. Today I am joined by Sam Jensen, a security engineer with a healthcare provider in San Diego. Today, Sam's going to talk about how we got into security, what education certs you need to get in and be successful, and other advice for people breaking into the field. And by the way, I will be holding a resume and cover letter workshop from April 4 to 5th, 2020. It will be hosted over Zoom. And in this workshop, we're going to create modern resumes to help you land more interviews and also write cover letters that will just take a few minutes to write. If you're interested, click the link in the description below for more information. All right, let's jump in. Hey, what's going on, Sam? Welcome to the second episode of the IT Career Guidance podcast. Uh, you know, so you go ahead and tell everybody here, what you do. I know you're in the security field, and a lot of people definitely want to be in cybersecurity and definitely want to have a good understanding. So if you can just share your story and how you got to where you are now, love for you to get into that.
Sure. Yeah. First of all, I appreciate you talking with me. And like I said before we started, hopefully this is useful to somebody. Um, so I got my start when I was 17. I enlisted in the Marines, and when I was going through the recruitment process, um, I think I heard a little bit of the interview you did with Josh. That was kind of in the same boat, where I was thinking about doing infantry or something more along those lines. Um, tested pretty well on my ASVAB score. Um, and so they're like, no, you don't want to do infantry, you tested higher. So what you're going to do is you're going to go into the data field, and you're going to get dropped into like enemy territory, and you're going to kick in doors, and then you're going to hack bad guys' computers and get out of there with like raw intel. And I was like, man, that sounds so cool.
Mhm.
Like, sign me up, of course, that's what I
Mhm.
want to do. And you know I did none of that in reality. So I did the same thing that Josh did. That's how we know each other, as I was in his platoon in Okinawa, so doing a lot more like network engineering stuff. um, we would set up networks in remote locations, so pretty much we would get sent to places that are so remote that they don't have any sort of network connectivity, and that's our job. So places that most people don't really fantasizing about visiting necessarily,
Mhm.
but there's a lot of good experience. But I did feel kind of slighted, maybe a little salty after the Marines, and after I got out. I was like, maybe I should try um, getting into another type of career. I started going to college after I got out, just kind of seeing what my options were.
Mhm.
Um, I got out in 2010, and we were still kind of coming out of the recession a little bit. So, I was trying to find a job, just like working at Starbucks or Petco, Dick's Sporting Goods, just trying to get like a job while I was in college. And I was having a really hard time, but uh, my friend's mom worked for 24 Hour Fitness in their IT department, and she's like, "Hey, why don't you come work here? We have a entry level position. You could fill in the meantime." And it paid much better than anything I would have gotten at like Starbucks or anything like that. So, um, so then I just was working in IT while I was going to school, and then I got an opportunity to work on base as a contractor doing cybersecurity at the air station on Camp Pendleton, and and then that was it. Once I had mixed feelings a little bit about IT in general when I was working on it, but as soon as I got into the cybersecurity field, it was kind of a whole different animal to me than typical IT, and it just really appealed to me at that time. The things that the way I had to approach problem solving, the way that you think about your day to day. Your whole job is to um, just stop bad guys. Like your main the things you're constantly trying to play a game of chess with the rest of the world, but the rest of the world is developing new pieces that have new moves for this chess game, and you're always trying to keep up, and it's never boring. You're constantly pushing yourself, and I think it's an amazing field that everyone should in IT should at least consider exploring a little bit to some degree.
So you were doing something like a blue team, red team kind of job role when you were at Pendleton?
Yeah, so when I first got to Pendleton, it was still pretty entry level, working on the air station. It was right at the beginning of the engine contract. I think NMCI was going away. The engine was like the new big thing. And so they were filling up a lot of contracting positions before they really had work. So the stuff that I was doing was very limited at the time, more conceptual, I guess.
Mhm.
Um, but then, they start cutting contracts, and there was like rumors that mine was potentially getting cut early on. I was subcontracting through a company called Intelitex, who was like subbing for AT&T, so it was kind of a mess. But they got an opportunity. A friend turned me on to a position at a local kind of startup SOC, Security Operations Center,
Mhm.
um, in Carlsbad, which was not too far away. And um, yeah, it was just an entry level SOC position. Um, and they put me on graveyard. I think a lot of people that start off in a SOC start kind of on the graveyard shifts,
Mhm.
kind of to be expected. But they give you the opportunity, if you prove yourself, then you'll move up more to the day shift. And I think that's really, I think, where I learned probably the most amount in the short amount of time. Um, and I had really great people I worked with that were really like excited about the field, and just like really made you enjoy coming to work every day.
Mhm.
We used to, working at the SOC, I was an analyst. My main job there was to review logs of, there's about, I think about like 32 different companies that we were monitoring log activity for. And so a day to day would be, you get alerts that are automatically generated from the SIM. Um, and then once the alert triggers, you kind of process it. Does this look like a false positive? Is this something that the client really needs to know about? Um, and then you send it over if it's a finding, with a little write up about recommendations and things like that. But I think what really got me inspired was we'd have competitions amongst the other analysts of in their downtime who could find the most who could find something that was actually malicious happening in a network,
Mhm.
without that wasn't generating alert. So we'd have competitions all the time to see who could find something like that.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. What was a sim? I don't know what that is.
The SIM is a security information and event manager.
Mhm.
Um,
Oh, okay.
so it's kind of like um, this aggregator for all these different types of logs. You send, you can send, you know, whatever XML files, JSON, syslog, Windows events. It'll take the raw log from these systems. It'll parse them into like a form, like a universal format that the SIM has, and then it kind of aggregates them together, and then it makes it really easy to look at. Um, essentially all of a client's logs show up kind of in the same view. You could easily sort through them,
Mhm.
and it really helps in kind of painting a picture of what's going on with the network.
Mhm. So would Splunk be one of these platforms?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
Splunk is, probably the most popular one.
Mhm.
Um, I use Splunk now. I've heard that there's sort of an underground Splunk cult, sort of like people that
Mhm.
just are huge like Splunk fanboys. But
I think that's true.
yeah, I think it's great. It definitely, does. I think the thing that kind of because they have like an add-on to Splunk that's actually
Mhm.
more of the security piece. So I guess Splunk gets all those logs and aggregates them, and I think the appeal of Splunk is the ability to how flexible it is to manipulate the logs and
Mm.
everything.
Okay.
But I think there's like an extra add-on module you have to pay for actual security features.
Mhm.
So a lot of like out of the box SIMs, um, they already come with like um, I guess what they call now like user behavior analytics
Mhm.
and preset like rules to detect malicious behavior.
Mhm.
Where I think Splunk out of the box, you know, it's Splunk isn't just used by security professionals; it's used for a lot of other big data
Mhm.
um, type IT personnel that just are trying to look at different behavior and analytics.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, actually, Proficio, I had a friend who also worked there in the SOC.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if you know him. His name is Alonzo. I've been trying to get him on here too, but he said the same exact thing about it, that it was the best experience it was for him.
Oh,
And
yeah.
he said he learned like a huge amount. He drove at least 2 hours each way every single day to go work there because it was a rewarding experience for him. And now he's doing extremely well in his career, just like yourself. So, and then, how long did you end up being in that SOC for?
I think altogether um, about 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I did know Alonzo while I was there.
Oh,
Alonzo's
okay,
a
nice.
great guy.
Hmm.
He still calls me to this day, like every other month,
Yeah,
just on his way home, just to like, hey, what you doing?
he does that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He to kill time on his commute. He just hits you up and stuff. He's got this little meetup going on now in Menifee, actually, like once a month.
Oh, cool.
Security thing. You probably check it out. They do presentations and stuff. So, well, that's cool. Nice.
That's great.
So,
It's such
yeah.
a small. Once you're kind of in that community, and it's so
Hmm.
small.
It's crazy, and you just kind of and like I think it's really amazing how if you network right in your career early on, it's always like down the road 5 years, people will hit me up and say, hey, by the way, I'm at this company now. If you ever want to try to jump on here, let me know or something like that. And it's like you really plant those seeds early with guys take classes with, like whether it be your CCNA
Yeah.
or for Alonzo, it was in a firewall class,
Okay.
and we just labbed every single week together, and we just kept talking, and now it's like now we have that relationship. It's really cool.
Yeah.
So
No, definitely. You can't burn bridges in this field
no
because
way.
it's like everyone knows everyone or knows
Hmm.
of everybody, and
Yep.
if you do make those connections, it's so valuable. I
Hmm.
think if you hear me talk, like my friend's mom introduced me to the first job
Hmm.
at Proficio, it was because I knew um, previously I worked with a recruiter. Her name was Shannon, and um, she was originally trying to get me into a network engineering spot at Legoland
Hmm.
when I first started looking back in IT. It didn't really work out, and then she became HR for Proficio,
Oh, whoa.
and so when I was leaving the government contract, she reached out to me like, "Hey, we're looking for more security analysts." So it's just these random connections that you might
Hmm.
not even think about. That
Yeah. No, that's crazy. That's cool. That's cool. So after Proficio, uh, okay, so hold on. Let's also try to tie in like what certifications you were doing at the same time too, because that's something that people want to think about as they're progressing in their careers.
okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So to get that contracting position on base, they required Security Plus
Mm-hmm.
and um, CCNA. I think back then it was just CCNA, but it would have been routing and switching.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so you had to have those two just to get in onto that contract,
Mm-hmm.
um, which isn't too bad. I mean, I would recommend anybody. Security Plus is just like you have to do that in the beginning. That's
Mm-hmm.
pretty much like standard. And if you can take Security Plus and really understand what's in it and really kind of own those concepts, that'll take you so far in your career. Because that's really is, I think it is a pretty good um, foundation for a lot of other things to be built upon.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, doing for that contract, I did those. When I went to Proficio, um, there wasn't any kind of certification really that they were pushing at the time. It was still when I was doing that, there wasn't really the new, I forgot what CompTIA calls it, but I know CompTIA has like a new like cyber certification or something like that.
Yeah, it's like psyops or something like
Yeah, or
that.
something like
Yeah,
that.
CISAC, CYS, something like that.
Yeah,
CISA, that's what it is. CYSA.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so one of my friends that I've been kind of getting into cybersecurity, he recently got a job at a SOC after getting
Mm-hmm.
Security Plus, and now that's the certification he's studying for. So I imagine that's probably what I would have been doing at Proficio.
Mm-hmm.
Um, while I was there, I was mostly um, reading a lot more about the different log types and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
The great thing about starting off in a SOC is like you immediately get access to like all these different security device logs. So you're
Mm-hmm.
seeing like logs from Cisco ASAs and Palo Altos and Checkpoint, and then you're getting all these different antivirus logs, and then you're getting um, IDS and NIDS logs and stuff like that. Um, Email gateways, like you just get exposed to like you see what everything is kind of, and
Mm-hmm.
you kind of understand how everything works and all the pieces work together to keep
Mm-hmm.
the network secure.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
so I spent a lot of time just kind of learning the logs while I was there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then after about 9 months, um, the thing is, I really recommend everyone for their first cybersecurity job, if they can, is try and get a SOC analyst position because for a couple of reasons, typically they're entry level positions. You learn so much really practical technical knowledge while you're on the job. And I think AT&T, I think it was AT&T did a study a few years ago that the average burnout rate for a security analyst is like 18 months,
Mm-hmm.
which I could probably kind of attest to. It does get pretty repetitive after a while, um, but that also kind of shows that in that field there's a high turnover rate. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people kind of use that as a launching point for their career, and then they quickly kind of master the job and learn that they become much more valuable very quickly and are
Mm-hmm.
like able to get a new position somewhere else.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So after Proficio, after doing that, after about 9 months, I kind of went from like the new guy to almost like the most senior analyst on the shifts. So I went from night graveyard to daytime, and then for daytime, I was kind of making the schedule for all the other analysts.
Mm-hmm.
And then around that time, 24 reached out to me again
Mm-hmm.
and said that they had a new security position and that I should interview for them. Um, I thought that the position was going to be a little bit sort of out of my league because I
Mm-hmm.
really wasn't ready to leave Proficio yet. I didn't feel like I had been there all that long. Um, and the position that they're asking for is like a real sort of engineer position. And I wasn't familiar with actually operating all these products.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never actually done vulnerability scanning before, um, anything like that. So, I just went into the interview and they asked me a lot of questions like, you know, they didn't expect me to know just to see how I would react.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, did the best I could. I was honest with them when I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And they asked fundamentals about Security Plus, so bringing that back up. I remember one of the questions they asked me was explain like a TCP, three-way handshake.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they were saying, later on that people that were interviewing for the senior level position didn't know the answer to that question,
Mm-hmm.
which was pretty surprising. But
Yeah.
it just shows that there is also still like a big deficit kind of in technical knowledge in the field.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but just having that foundation, just showing up, being confident, and just being excited about what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
The director that ultimately kind of hired me said he was really impressed because I was taking some cyber security courses around this time, and he was asking me like, what would you set your password timeout policy to
Mm-hmm.
be for the company? And I was like, oh, I would set it probably for like 20 minutes because you have to make sure that it has to be long enough so someone can't brute force the
Mm-hmm.
password, but it can't be too long, or they're going to do a denial of service on your accounts and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. And he was like, I've never heard someone be passionate about setting a password timeout.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, that's really awesome. And that's, I think, what a lot of people are looking for.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah. I think passion, a genuine interest makes a big difference. And everybody, I think a lot of people can attest to that, how they got in and really started to flourish. So, and you were taking these classes at like a local community college or at Cal State or something?
That at that time, yeah, I would think I was going to UMUC. I was doing
Mm-hmm.
online courses.
Okay.
At the time, they were kind of like one of the first ones to really give like an accredited all online cybersecurity bachelor's degree.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can see it a lot more now. Like I think at the time, um, nearby where I live is CSU San Marcos,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't even have like a cybersecurity course at all there. It was all just computer science at the time,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of makes me feel like I sound really old, but it's
Mm-hmm.
really like it really wasn't that long ago. It was 7 years ago.
Right. Yeah. I think a lot of these technical jobs, are now becoming. I hate to say it, kind of like ITT Tech was back when in the early 2000s. It's kind of something you would see during the day, watching after you watch Judge Judy at 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
You and for me personally, I think it's great that it's a high demand industry, especially cyber. But at the same time, it sets expectations for people, and they also usually get scammed in the process.
Yeah.
They get into a lot of debt because it's told like, oh, you're going to graduate, and you're going to make like $150,000. Just take our boot camp, and you're going to be great. You're going to be good to go in 18 months, 8 months. They get out, they're like, oh, we can't get you a job. Bye. Thanks for
Yeah.
the money. So I feel really bad for those people because they get sold the dream, and the expectations from the industry are not exactly what they were told initially. Um, I was very fortunate that I had the right people tell me kind of what to expect
Yeah.
and what to do, and I can't thank those people enough. But some people, they just unfortunately they just meet the wrong person at the right time, the wrong time, and
Yeah.
they get put into a situation and they're tied financially that they can't get out of, and it's really painful.
Yeah. No, that's terrible. I honestly, I never finished my bachelor's degree.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Hmm.
and I have a friend who I helped get a position at a SOC
Hmm.
that had very limited IT experience, and he doesn't have a degree.
Hmm.
So it's definitely possible. I
I
don't
agree.
know if I want to be the person to tell you anyone like you should or
Hmm.
shouldn't spend time getting a degree.
Hmm.
For me, I was still going to school. I was working,
Hmm.
and when I was going to UMUC, spending a lot of time and effort on these classes, and the highest level cybersecurity class they had was to prepare you to get your CISSP,
Mhm.
and I had already gotten my CISSP, so I was kind of like, if that's like the most intense course they have, and I already have
Mhm.
it, like I feel like I'm wasting my time a little bit,
Right. Mhm.
um, and to some extent, um, I think a CISSP can be just as valuable as a degree in the hiring process.
Mhm. Yeah,
Obviously, if you have both, they'll be much better for you in the long run. But
right. Yeah, I think having a degree really gets you past the gatekeepers right off the bat. I'm a big believer though that, you know, in any place, in any IT field, you meet people who have degrees or don't have degrees, but what they all do have is some sort of base certification. In network engineering, everybody had a CCNA at one point in time.
yeah,
Security, everybody had a security plus. Sysadmins, it's probably like a Red Hat or a Microsoft cert. No matter what, it's always that's the main barrier of entry is actually the certification, or the true test of knowledge, in my opinion.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, definitely.
So okay, so then you got the job at 24 Hour Fitness, and then you was kind of like was it really difficult for you because there was, as you said, you weren't really familiar with the type of platforms they were using in that kind of engineer role?
Yeah, no, I didn't know a whole lot of anything of what I was doing when I first started.
Hmm.
Um, Thankfully, my boss and my boss's boss there were both really smart guys, very technical guys, um, and they believed they could teach you how to do the job. You just have to have the desire to learn.
Hmm.
So I learned vulnerability scanning. Um, I had never really messed with Linux a lot until I went there, and all the systems pretty much ran on Linux. Um, my uh, my boss kind of just forced me to use it all the time and get comfortable with the command line. Um, had me write basic scripts to do stuff, to automate some things, um, and then kind of by the end of the time I was there, you know, I was setting up a sim by myself, getting all the logs, tuning, configuring it. I was doing all the vulnerability scans, figuring out the remediations, maybe like some light kind of red teaming, um, and being able to kind of just get more freedom to be able to determine where I thought our biggest vulnerabilities were and be able to tackle projects to help secure those. Um, I think one thing that's really important is to constantly be reading the news. And, I personally have a Feedly that I use
Hmm.
filled with RSS feeds to all these different cybersecurity news websites. And I look for trends every morning. And I could see like, attackers are really kind of pivoting to using these types of um, attacks.
Hmm.
How are we, defending against that? And if I see a gap, then, it's something that needs to be brought up and addressed. And I really liked working at 24 because we had our normal tasks, but we also had the freedom to be able to do our own projects and do what we thought was right.
Hmm. That's really cool. And so that's interesting. I've never heard somebody in the security field said that they had to read the news to kind of, because every year there's like a new flavor of malware or a new kind of attack that's kind of hot. Like a few years ago, it was what's that one where they encrypt all your servers,
Oh,
ransomware.
somewhere.
Yeah, so that was like the big one, and everyone had to learn how to do backups. You
Yeah.
know, and everyone started doing backups to the cloud, and the cloud was really happy. You know, so that's pretty cool though. I never thought about that though. That being that you have to be up with the times.
Oh,
It's
yeah. It's, I think, and that's something, I've helped when I was at 24 Proficio, and in my current position now, I've helped interview people for new positions or internships. One of the things that I always ask when I'm conducting my portion is, tell me about a recent threat that you've read about or something interesting
Mhm.
you've heard
Mm.
recently about cybersecurity. And, that kind of helps me determine how passionate they really are about the fields. There's something to be said about people that have elaborate at home labs and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But for me, um, it's really being interested in what's happening in the world.
Mhm.
But yeah, keeping up with the news is huge. You always have like Microsoft releasing their new advisories and stuff like that.
Mhm.
A couple like I kind of follow Sophos's blog. There's one from Kaspersky Threat Post, things like that. And it's just, sometimes when you do it for so long, it's kind of like same attack, different name. It's like just a
Mhm.
new version of ransomware. They'll tweak it a little bit so it has like a new, um, I guess, nasty feature to it.
Mhm.
But after a while, after you spend enough time reading it, you kind of understand all the threat or the attack vectors are all sort of the same. As long as you're doing your basic hygiene for the network, having antivirus on your hosts, you have, some kind of firewall, you have some kind of email gateway that's helping filter emails, got to be training your users. As long as you're doing your due diligence there, it helps take care of a lot of the attacks that you kind of see over and over again.
Mhm. Nice. That's cool. And then so you were at 24 for about was it like a year?
24, I spent 3 years there.
Oh wow. Okay. Mhm. And then so by that time you already had you did your CISSP while you were working there?
Yep, that was
Okay.
actually part of my like hiring requirements there. Was
Mm.
kind of this unwritten rule that I would work there for at least 2 years, and I would get my CISSP while I was there.
Oh nice. Okay. And they sponsored that.
Yep.
Mhm. Okay. Okay. And then so when you went to trying to backtrack here, when you were at the SOC, what was kind of like the pay range you were? I know this is Southern California, so there's always a markup, but
Mhm.
can you give me like a range, kind of like of guys who were fresh to guys who were senior, and gals? Of course, there were women there, but just kind of a salary idea, or if there was like if it was hourly with OT and things like that.
Sure. Yeah, it was hourly.
Mhm.
Um, Sometimes you'd have to. There'd be cases where you'd have to cover someone's shift, which stocks most stocks run 24/7. Um, it's a lot of shift work. Sometimes people call out, and it's not like other positions where if you call out, that means someone's got to step in for you.
Mhm.
But the pay range for that, I would say, would be like, um, I guess on average around 50K, maybe a little bit more, 50 to
Okay.
60K.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know how much. I think that was for the analysts. I don't think it went too much higher for analysts.
Mhm.
Once you got past that, then you kind of became an engineer,
Mhm.
and you were more dealing with new customers, integrating with SAM with new customers.
Mhm.
I'm not totally sure what the range for that would be, but
Mhm.
um, I would say it sounds like that is pretty standard for SOCs, at least in Southern California.
Mhm. Okay. I think that's a great starting pay, especially if you just have a Sec Plus um, under your belt too, and you're just trying to get experience.
Mm.
So, and then from there, at 24, did you start to see like once you got the engineer title and those kinds of responsibilities plus the CISSP, did you see like a big like 30% pay increase from that point?
Uh, you said once getting to 24.
Hmm.
Yeah, 24 was more. I think working for a company, being an actual, I guess, security engineer.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I I don't know how competitive 24 was, but I think they were relatively competitive. And I think for an engineer, you're looking at probably like maybe 75 to 90, 95K
Okay.
like for a mid-level engineer.
Hmm. So you're just right under that six-figure threshold then, right at that
Mhm.
mid-level point. Okay.
Yeah.
So nice. And then, so then you were there for 3 years. You already had your CISSP. Did you get any other certifications while you were there?
Yeah, so while I was there, I think after about a year and a half, I got my CISSP.
Mm-hmm.
And so for them, they knew CISSP is a big deal. So they promoted me once I got that, because, they know once you get that certification, you become a lot more valuable on the market.
Mm-hmm.
I think CISSP is still like probably the number one certification that recruiters look for in cybersecurity,
Mm-hmm.
at least for the really, more competitive mid-level to senior positions.
Mm-hmm.
But while I was there, I also took a couple SANS courses. Um, I got my GCIH there, the incident handler certification.
Mm-hmm.
I took John Strand's class, hacker incident response and hackers tools and techniques,
Mm-hmm.
which was really awesome. I'd recommend that for anyone, getting into more technical component of their career.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and that was an incident response course, right?
Yeah, so it was kind of a mixture. The first day is all about incident response and setting up an incident response plan.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other 4 or 5 days is all learning about how attackers think. So it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
almost kind of like a red hat course, kind of disguised as um, an informational course, but
Mm-hmm.
you spend most of the rest of the class doing, um, you know, red teaming type activities.
Mm-hmm.
You go through kind of the whole sort of attack process. You do like enumeration. So you'll be doing like nmap scans.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you'll be doing, looking vulnerability scans, finding vulnerabilities, trying to exploit them, using tools like NCAT and Metasploit, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was a really great class. It doesn't like really teach you enough to be like super hacker or anything, but by going through and kind of lightly doing what an attacker would do, really kind of puts all the pieces together to be like, all right, now I kind of see what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's cool. And this was a like a boot camp?
Yeah, it's SANS courses.
Oh, okay, okay.
They're pretty probably one of the best cybersecurity courses you could take.
Mm-hmm.
They're super expensive.
They
I,
are, yeah.
I think a
And
5, 6 day course is like last time it was like 6,800 or something like that.
wow, that's
So
crazy.
if
Mm-hmm.
you're not getting sponsored by a company,
Yeah.
it's almost like unrealistic to really.
Mm-hmm. They have a master's program actually, and in that program you do like I think it's like 8 certifications essentially, but you're just going to this the SANS conferences, um, wherever they are, and you just take the classes there
Yeah.
and do online project. It's actually it's pretty appealing for somebody who wants to have the masters and have the training and the certifications. I think it would be really powerful, but it's expensive, of course. So that's the only downside.
Oh yeah, I think anyone that would probably have that master's degree, but probably have a lot of street cred just because
Yeah,
how
definitely.
how hands-on SANS is,
Hmm.
to get those certifications, to those are the kinds of tests that are like half questions, half practical application. So someone that would get all those certs, that they really would need to know their stuff.
Hmm. Definitely, definitely. And then, what did you do for your CISSP? Like that's a pretty intense exam. You know, like what were you studying? Did you take any courses? Anything like that?
Yeah, I just I bought um the CISSP books. I think at the time it was I think her name was Shannon Harris.
Hmm.
She was kind of famous for writing these CISSP books, but she unfortunately passed away a few years ago.
Oh no.
Um, so I was reading her book, and then I found someone on YouTube that was doing sort of a beta class, um, online. So they're trying to work out the details of their class.
Mhm.
But it was essentially like 5 6 to 8 hour long YouTube videos
What?
of just like pretty much a boot camp, a CISSP
Mm,
boot camp. Um, I think his name was Eric Green something,
mhm,
Eric Greenblatt, I want to say. Um, but so I would just listen to those YouTube videos on my commute to and from work.
mhm.
Um, and really just between those two. And then I was fortunate enough to have some of the experience at 24 Hour Fitness, kind of put all those together. And
Mhm.
um, that was pretty much it. A lot of the test is um, not completely practical, but you have to think about it from a business perspective.
Right.
Sort of just like, you're working for a company, this happens. You have to think about security, but also the business aspect. The company still has a bottom line that they need to maintain.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it was a tough test, and I hear that it's only getting harder. So
Yeah.
I don't envy anyone that's still, I have a lot of respect for people still trying to take that test.
Mhm. Did you pass it on the first time?
Yes.
Nice. That's someone we both know.
Yeah.
Earlier mentioned it took him several times, and it's not an easy exam. And that's why it's so highly regarded.
Yeah.
So. Mhm,
No, he talked to me through some of that when he was studying for it,
mhm,
for tips and stuff like that too.
yeah. Mhm. But as you know, and he knows too, it changes your career.
Mhm.
It adds a new dimension. So yeah. Um, okay. And then from 24, where'd you go from there?
Yeah. So from 24, I went to the healthcare organization I work at now
Hmm.
in San Diego. They're a major healthcare organization, and it was another situation where um, I actually also thought that this position was out of my league. It
Hmm.
was a senior level position, um, but I just didn't. I was already stable in my job at 24, and I thought, there's nothing, not a whole lot to lose, and be a great experience.
Hmm.
There's these different kind of pillars of cybersecurity. You have kind of the business aspect. There's kind of the business pillar. There's the government pillar. There's kind of industrial controls, and there's healthcare. So I kind of had worked in the government and the business side of things. Healthcare would be like getting another section of cybersecurity under my belt, which made it really appealing. And
Hmm.
yeah, they said that the position had been open for like 9 months. They were having a really hard time filling it.
Hmm.
Um, and the things that they looked at mostly for when they hired me was I had experience with vulnerability management programs,
Hmm.
which they really needed help with. And I had some experience at 24 with PCI, which they didn't really need as much help with, but
Hmm.
dealing with compliance, being able to understand how to work with auditors and stuff like that. And then that incident handling certification that I got from SANS, they were kind of looking to revamp their incident response program.
Hmm.
So I helped them with that. Um, but you think like I'm still kind of at I guess a senior level security engineer, but I still only feel like I know the tip of the iceberg of everything.
Hmm.
I feel there's so much in cybersecurity that's overwhelming, and you really can't learn all of it. I
Hmm.
mean, you can be a kind of, I think I more generalize in everything, but I
Hmm.
don't feel like I really master any one aspect. But I think you would just be surprised if you put yourself out there
Hmm.
how much everybody else doesn't know also. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's, you find that in any technical uh, part of IT, right? There's network engineers who know so much about one thing. But go to another guy, he doesn't know much about packet analysis or something, right? There's so many rabbit holes you can jump into in the technical industry.
Yeah.
Mhm. Um, and so you talk about vulnerability scanning. Is that like Nessus or Nexus?
Yeah. So the most popular one I think still is Tenable's Nessus,
Hmm.
which is really easy to use. Another one that I really like is Nextpost by Rapid7.
Hmm.
What I like about theirs is that they're the ones that create Metasploit
Hmm.
or maintain Metasploit. So
Oh, okay.
um, so when you do a vulnerability scan, the results that you get, they'll tell you within the scan like, hey, this is a vulnerability and there's a Metasploit module for it.
Hmm.
If there's a Metasploit module, you know that it can be easily exploited,
Hmm.
since a lot of Metasploit is just kind of aiming the program at whatever you want, selecting the pre-written exploit, and they'll
Hmm.
just take care of it for you.
Right. Yeah. Nice. And okay. Okay. So throughout your last two jobs as a security engineer, like kind of what is your like daily routine like, or just normal day in the life?
Yeah, no, that's a really hard question to answer because it's
Hmm.
so fluid. But I would say most days it starts off with me checking my feed,
Hmm.
looking for new things that I might be concerned about, the company might be concerned about. Um, Usually, there's a lot of meetings with other teams. You have
Hmm.
to kind of, you have to work with the infrastructure team, the networking team, the database, the DBAs, um, the application owners, DevOps. You really have to kind of make sure that you're working hand in hand with them throughout all their projects, because the last thing you want is them to have some like project you've never heard of until they go live with it, and then you realize that there's all these new flaws or vulnerabilities exposed on your network.
Hmm.
So maintaining a good relationship with all these other teams, um, so with the meetings, and then my team has different kind of sections that they're responsible for.
Hmm.
um, right now I'm more responsible for cloud-based security,
Hmm.
doing the vulnerability management, incident response program, and then sometimes some of the red teaming,
Hmm.
um, and then some threat hunting. um,
Nice.
so just, I think every day for me is, which one of those is kind of taking the precedent at the moment, um, which one has goals that I need to achieve. um, and I think another big portion of security is being able to decide what's best use of your time at any given moment.
Hmm. Okay. That's crazy.
I don't know if
Nice.
that actually answers your question or is helpful at
Yeah.
all.
Well, and this is what I've noticed with security engineers. It's always like it's always prioritizing what's important, working with other teams because they have to secure those teams' projects and
Mm.
maintain that relationship. Because if you don't have that good relationship, you're more like a pain in their ass, if anything.
Oh yeah,
You don't want to be that person. You want to have like it's like it goes both ways. You have to kind of create that relationship, which is really important. And it's a huge people side to in the security especially.
yeah, yeah, definitely. It's y- a lot of times what our goals are and the other team's goals. Our Everybody wants the network to be secure,
Hmm.
but a lot of security implements or kind of hinders what they're trying to do. Maybe they're trying to set up some new file sharing system that lets people work from home easier and stuff like that. But then we get upset because you're like, wait a second, you have um, this file sharing server. We didn't really check it first. We didn't, you know, do our due diligence. Now people, what kind of documents are people putting on this file share?
Hmm.
Then we have all these questions. That's just one example. You could probably find anything that anyone's working about, and
Hmm.
we'll have something to say.
Yeah, yeah, something to say.
Yeah.
Nice. That's a good political way to put it. Nice. So I think, is there anything else you want to add about, your own experiences that you really want to share, that you think could be meaningful or that someone could take away from it?
Yeah, I think, the biggest things is still just, if you if you want to get into this field, you could get into this field. There's opportunities. You just really have to show that you're passionate about it by, getting excited about what you're talking about, or reading those articles, and then just really put yourself out there and just, go for it. A lot of people I talk to, um, I tell them like, oh, you could definitely get this job if you wanted to. They seem so hesitant, like, I don't know it, I don't know how to do these couple things in the bulletins.
Mhm.
And you just have to, like, even if you don't know it right now, as long as you are eager to learn and you can jump in there and try and figure it out, um, you'll be fine.
Mhm. Nice. Yeah, and um, I think that that trips a lot of people up. It even trips me up, right? If I were to go apply for a job and I'd see all this stuff, I go like, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's it's a lot of stuff that they're asking that I've never touched,
yeah,
or didn't have the slightest clue. So yeah, I understand, and I've been doing this not as long as you have, but you know, uh, there would be certain expectations of me, right? That sometimes it would be like, well, I've never seen that, or I've never had the opportunity to work on that platform. So but it's like I'm willing to learn it given the opportunity.
yeah. No, is there anything that, people are really interested in or asking about, or things that you seem like a lot of people
It's
want to hear you?
always um, there's always like this. There's always a constant debate of degree versus certification, and I've made my point on that, and I've driven that home. And then it goes down to like what kind of certifications. And I think probably because I'm a network engineer and uh, I've always touched Cisco equipment, and it's the CCNA carries so much weight because that was the only certification I got in the beginning, and it got me a good job right away,
Yeah,
and then it kept getting me good jobs. So for me, like my personal experience is biased. And also, if you look at it from a business perspective, which I think everybody should try to take that into account when they are in this field, is that, what does a business need? Do they need somebody with a vendor neutral certification like a Network Plus, or a vendor certification that they know they have that vendor inside their environment, which makes business sense for them. So
yeah,
um, but I think with security, I think a lot of people just kind of want to know, like, what kind of experience can they get, or can they kind of try to get in the door faster, or how can they create more experience, or what can they do to be a more attractive candidate, so to speak.
yeah, yeah. No, I would say if I'm looking at an entry level position, um, if you can get your security plus and you can speak to it,
Hmm.
I don't need you to be really an expert in anything, but if you can show that you know the material in security plus, um, you're interested in current events, I think, to me, that goes a long way getting your foot in the door.
Hmm.
um, if you want to do some more like, technical things and sharpen your technical skills, I would say, um, in your free time, try and learn basic Linux commands. Being able to move around a Linux file structure from the command line. And then I think there's a site called, Sec Tool List, something like that.
Hmm.
Sec Tool List, and it lists like the top open source security tools that you can download and just, use at your home.
Hmm.
So you can do like an Nmap scan or a Nessus scan of, just your internal private network. I mean, don't scan the internet or anything because someone will
Hmm.
shut you down. But, um, you can have tools like that. You can download Snort and try and do packet captures on your home network and stuff like that. They have commercial firewalls that you can set up for your home network. That's if you want to get more technical or get more hands-on experience.
Hmm.
But, for me, if I'm interviewing an entry level position, I just need to know that you can comprehend the concepts that are in Security Plus and that you have the passion to keep taking it further.
Hmm. Nice. Okay. I think that gives people something very actionable and reasonable. It's not impossible. They can do that actually right now if they really wanted to.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing all that stuff. There's a few questions that some folks had, so let's kind of go through that. Let's see. Oh yeah, let's talk about the hours. Like, is it as you said, it can be fluid, your day to
Mhm.
day, but is it like, you're working sometimes 18 hours straight, some days it's a normal 9 to 5. Can you kind of like go into that?
Yeah, I would say um, most of the time, at least for me, it's a pretty regular 8-hour day. Um, a lot of times, like right now, we have an on-call rotation
Hmm.
with the team. So when you're on call, you could be responding to things any time of the day. Um, both at 24 and my current job, on call lasts for a week.
Hmm.
So you could get calls in the middle of the night saying something needs to be investigated. Someone clicked on a phishing link. There's some weird port activity, I guess, in the network.
Hmm.
Um, so that those weeks where you're on call, that's when it varies the most, I would say. You could be very busy or you could have a very quiet on call.
Hmm.
And then, occasionally things will come up where you're getting ready to go home and then um, something major will happen and then you'll be there for another 5 hours or so.
Hmm.
Worst case scenario really, but um, I would say if you're fortunate, and have pretty good security, that wouldn't happen as often,
Hmm.
um, hopefully. But every company just has to assume that they're going to be breached at some point.
Right. It's kind of comes with the territory.
Yeah.
Hmm. Okay. Nice. I know we kind of touched on this, but just kind of more directly. Aaron asked, like, what advice would you give someone who is looking to become a security engineer?
Yeah. Do you mean like moving from entry level kind of to the next level?
Yeah, like say someone's in help desk.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I think at 24, I had someone that was trying to kind of, move that direction. I think, you know, doing those entry level certifications if you can. Um, but if you're already working at a company and trying to do kind of a position change, I try and, ask your security guys what they're working on, what kind of projects they're doing. Um, if they have time, maybe they can explain how, what they're doing. If they're doing vulnerability scans, maybe you can um, let them show you how they run a scan or show you what the results look like.
Hmm.
Um, maybe show you what the sim looks like, and just ask a lot of questions.
Hmm. Okay. Nice. Okay. Um, and then, like for you, you've been in this industry, you've been doing security now for what, 6 years?
I would say since maybe about 7 now.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
So, and you're seeing, do you think the demand is going to go higher? That this industry is going to continue to grow?
yeah. I keep telling everybody, like friends and family, they're like, you've made really good career decisions and stuff like that. Get where you are so quickly,
Hmm.
and I just keep telling them like I just feel like I'm in a bubble right now that I don't really know when that's gonna pop.
Hmm.
Like I feel like right now the job market is really hot, and I feel like eventually there's got to be a generation that comes in that just like graduates high school, expert cybersecurity engineers,
Right.
but um, I don't know. I don't see it happening in the immediate future.
Hmm.
It seems like everything is still ramping up so much and the demand is increasing faster than we could fill it, especially with the, Internet of Things, all the IoT devices and stuff like that. Um, it still feels like we're falling behind. So
Hmm.
I would say in the immediate future, I think there's still going to be a lot of opportunities.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I would agree. I think it's a huge industry, no matter what. And I think it's kind of funny you bring up these kids growing up who just graduate. I know Israel has a program like that, where they take the best kids and they're like, "Let me see you on a computer," and they go, "Come with me," and then they're kind of like they're getting trained to do
Yeah.
cyber at like 15.
Yeah.
And then I know we do something like that in the United States. I think it's like Cyber Patriot is kind
Yep.
of the way it's starting. Would you, if someone like young listening to this, would you try to tell someone right now, like you go do that and be as involved as possible?
Yeah. I mean, if you're in high school, like about a month ago, I spoke at National University, helping, just doing kind of like a forum for undergrads and seniors getting ready to graduate to getting jobs. And kind of in the back row, there was like a group of, I think there were Cyber Patriot high school students that
Hmm.
came to, um, and I was just really impressed with the projects that they're working on and
Hmm.
just the enthusiasm that they have. Like, I was like, I don't even know why you guys are asking me for advice because you guys are already so far ahead of your time.
Hmm. Yeah, that's cool. Good for them. They're
Yeah.
going to be making a lot of money. Uh, uh, I always wondered about, I always kind of hear about this. How much programming do you really need to know to be proficient at security?
Hmm. I think it all still just kind of depends on what you're doing.
Hmm.
But I would say if you're a programmer by trade first, you're going to have a much easier time getting into cybersecurity probably than most any other kind of transition.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of, I'm not like really amazing at programming. I know basic scripting, like I could get around with using Bash and PowerShell and stuff like that to a degree, but
Hmm.
actually being able to really be fluent in languages, writing many programs, being able to automate things, if you can do that, and maybe be able to find bugs in software, like you're already going to be way ahead of the game trying to make that
Hmm.
transition.
Yeah, I would agree. I think if you can automate your tasks, it makes a big difference, and especially in some sort of scanning or any blue team, red team kind of situation.
Yeah.
Okay. So David asked, what brings in the title engineer into the security role?
Yeah, that's a pretty good question. um, Part of me kind of wants to say tradition a little bit, like
Okay.
I feel like a lot of the stuff that I was doing as like a security admin versus security engineer um, didn't change a lot. One of my bosses would say, like, now that you're an engineer, I I shouldn't be telling you what you need to work on as much.
Hmm.
um, I had one of my bosses that I really look up to. He said, "You're not an engineer until you break something."
Right.
So um, I think for the most part, engineer is a title. Um, but I think by trade, being an engineer, you should be, instead of just like using a SIM or a vulnerability scanner,
Hmm.
you should be able to deploy new security products into your environment,
Hmm. Yeah.
and be able to deploy, operate, create the policies for the documentation, um, being able to put something on the network and being able to know what it has access to, what it needs access to, working with the working teams, strategically placing it. I think those are all more tasks an engineer would do.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's pretty much kind of in systems, network, database. That sounds about what an engineer does.
Yeah,
Kind of engineering the environment, so to speak.
yeah.
Uh, so I'm not sure if this, from what we talked about, but David asked as well about malware reverse engineering. Do you know much about that kind of stuff?
Um, I would say that goes back to being kind of more of like, I guess maybe not necessarily programming a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but taking malware and being able to look at the code and understand how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's usually more kind of advanced level.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that could be either part of red teaming or part of forensics. It's not something that I've ever really needed to do as part of my career,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's super fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Every time someone comes up with a new type of attack, it's always like, it's scary, but it's also almost kind of beautiful at the same time.
Yeah.
You really kind of appreciate like how creative and um, how forward thinking some of these attackers can be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So actually, I'll put it into the chat because maybe the way I'll ask is not really the way that David is trying to ask it.
Uh, it's, it's, yeah, I mean, I think static, dynamic. I think a lot of that kind of analysis on malware
Mm-hmm.
is more kind of what researchers would be doing.
Mm-hmm.
People that um, more like vendors, like a lot of vendors, companies that make antivirus and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times they're more the ones doing the reverse engineering, analyzing the malware. Um, uh, like SANS has their like section that does a lot of it and updates their threat advisories and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, like from what I've seen, just that a lot of companies, you don't necessarily worry about it in that much of detail. You're kind of understanding that there's this new type of malware,
Mm-hmm.
and you're just more concerned that you have something that will be able to detect it if it happens. Um, a lot of times, very rarely do I see something in the environment that's like never been discovered before, unless
Mm-hmm.
you maybe have a honeypot hanging out there that, trying to collect stuff and analyze it. Just what I've seen, a lot of times you don't find new malware. Someone's usually reported it first. Someone's
Mm-hmm.
already kind of done a write-up, in their security blogs or whatever.
Right.
Um, so working as an engineer for a company, like 24 healthcare, you're reading these advisories and you're saying, all right, there's this new type of malware. It comes in through, maybe a Word document that uses macros. It connects to once a user opens the document, it'll reach out to these URLs over these ports or these IP addresses over these ports. So then you're more just kind of reacting to, all right, we want to make sure we don't have any hosts making outbound connections to these sites. We want to make sure that our email gateway has the signatures for this to stop it before it reaches the user's mailbox. We want to make sure if they, get directed outbound, the firewall will stop them before they get there.
Mm. Oh, okay. So you kind of get an idea of how the attack is designed, and then you build around it to prevent it.
I think a lot of companies, you have so much stuff, other stuff that you're working on,
Mm-hmm.
that I think companies a lot of the time will be like, if you have time to take something apart and analyze it and do a write-up, that's cool. But, that's a lot of effort, and there's a lot of attacks coming at you all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be kind of, unless that's kind of your job. Like I think at Proficio, they added a new position where, there was kind of a, threat investigations and writing blogs for their feed about new types of attacks.
hmm
But unless you're like, I guess, trying to get clientele for something for a security product, most of the time you're not really doing that kind of thing. At least just from what I've seen in my experience.
Right. Yeah. I think that's pretty much on the corporate side. That's usually the case.
Yeah.
You rely on the vendors and the new information that's being put out there,
hmm
and your job is to apply it in the business and do to reduce the most risk possible.
Yeah.
hmm Nice. So that's all the questions actually. Like what's your plan now? So you pretty much reached. What's your official title now?
Senior security engineer.
hmm So where do you go from here? Like what's your plan?
Yeah. So at this kind of point in your career, I think you typically go either the architect route,
hmm
um, be as technical as you can and kind of be the guy that oversees all those sort of operations, or you kind of go the manager route, which I think I've been kind of leaning more towards.
hmm
Just, I have developed a lot of experience working with other teams, like I said, and being able to kind of come up with plans of actions for things like that. I think incident handling helps a lot because I have a lot more experience handling events now.
hmm
So being able to kind of lead a team through um, those kind of responses, um, it's just something that I'm kind of more, it's more appealing to me, I guess, than the principal engineer.
hmm For sure.
And
Nice.
it seems like, there's people in cybersecurity that I've known that are super smart and technical, that never want to interact with anybody. They
Right.
just want to be left alone,
hmm
do their thing, and create amazing things,
hmm
which is awesome. I think I'm more just, I think I'm personally more valuable um, going to meetings and coordinating with other teams and helping individuals grow in their career.
hmm No, it's cool. It's great you know that already. So, mhm. Okay. Well, that's all the questions I have for you, Sam. Again, thank you. Do you want to like put out your LinkedIn or any way people can reach out to you if you want to? If not, it's cool. Um,
Sure. I guess I could send you a link maybe and you could put it
yeah,
with.
sure. I'll put it on the blog and stuff like that.
And I guess if anyone has any like follow-up questions or anything like that,
hmm
they can reach out to you or feel free
Yeah.
to reach out to me and any info I could provide.
hmm Cool. Yeah. Hopefully we can do this again. I learned a lot actually, and I've worked with several security engineers, and this was probably one of the more insightful talks that I've
Great.
had. So again, I really appreciate your time, Sam, and thanks again for coming on.
Yeah. No, thanks so much, Thomas. Thanks for having me.
Mhm.
Take
All right.
care.
Take care. All right.
See ya.
Hey guys, thanks again for listening to this episode, and thanks again to Sam for taking the time out of his busy life to join us. And before you go, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter at itcg.tech. Follow us on Instagram at IT_career_guidance. Got to really fix that. And then join our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/IT career guidance. All right, guys. Talk to you then.